Hello and welcome to Just City's Court Watch orientation. My name is Janae Gibson and I'm the Court Watch coordinator here at Just City. I am incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to learn more about our program and hopefully become a volunteer with us. I'm going to give you just a brief history of our organization just in case this is your first time hearing about us. So Just City was started in 2015 as a way to address the problems that are rampant in our legal system. We do that through our 3 programs as well as engaging in some strategic litigation. Our Clean Slate program started as a way to fund expungements because there was a $450 barrier, which is inaccessible to people living paycheck to paycheck. Through some legislation, however, we were able to remove that fee and thus end the need for a fund. Our Clean Slate coordinator now helps people start the expungement process and walks alongside those who have especially intricate cases, as well as continuing to address the many barriers that are prevalent in the expungement process. The Memphis Community Bail Fund pays bail for $5,000 and below in order to help people return to their jobs and families with minimal disruption. Too many people were and still are sitting in jail, not because they pose a public safety risk, but simply because they cannot afford bail. And finally, we have our Court Watch program, which provides insight into a notoriously hidden system, and I will discuss more about that now. So our mission is that we exist to provide objective insight into our courtrooms in pursuit of a smaller, fairer, and more humane justice system. Our first goal is that we provide transparency and accountability in our court system. We provide transparency for the community by letting them know what is happening in the courtroom, and accountability for those that we elect by shining a light on their conduct in the courtroom. Our goals 2 and 3 are the practical ways of completing goal 1. And so we aim to bring transparency by producing frequent reports of what we see in the courtroom. And we want accountability from our officials by demanding better from them based off of our observations. Our values are core to why this program exists. If there's anything that you believe that you feel is incompatible with our values, then our program might not be right for you. So, number 1 is all people have inherent dignity, and we believe in a system that treats people accordingly. Regardless of who it is, everyone deserves to be spoken to and about with respect. We don't use words like criminals to other people, and we also don't treat victims like their pain is for our consumption, so we don't take pictures of them because this is a real life thing happening to them. 2, it is important to critically evaluate our beliefs regularly and have an open mind to change your opinion when new information is presented. So regardless if you're on the uproot the system side of the spectrum or lean towards law and order, we need to be able to evaluate our beliefs as we get more information. Number 3, as my favorite lawyer, Brian Stevenson, said, each person is more than the worst thing they've ever done. People make terrible mistakes, people do terrible things, but they are still more than that, and they still have the inherent dignity that all humans have. And then number 4, as one of my favorite activists, Andre Henry, said, it doesn't have to be this way. The way that the criminal justice system is set up now is not beneficial. It is not working for us. It is not working for those who are consistently going through it. It is not making us safer. And it just doesn't have to be this way. We can be a part of that change. So there are 4 really key players that we are watching when we are court watching. So we'll start with the district attorney. So the district attorney office is led by Steve Mulroy, who was elected in August of 2022. And he sets the policies for an entire office that represent the state. And so you'll hear district attorney, prosecutor, and state used pretty interchangeably. Of the people that you see in the courtrooms, their titles are typically like ADA, which means assistant district attorney. or prosecutor, or they'll say the state says this. Then we are watching the judges in the courtrooms. So we watch the criminal courtrooms here in Shelby County. We watch upstairs criminal court, which is the state's court. They handle all of the jury trials and any resolutions to felonies. So downstairs is the county court, general sessions. They handle a lot of the first appearances, and they will do any probable cause or preliminary hearings to determine probable cause in order to move it upstairs if it's a felony. We also are just like watching the defense attorneys, seeing how they are representing their clients and seeing how they interact with the system. And then finally, the sheriff is in charge of the jail, and they are also in charge of like the courtroom environment. And so the deputies that you'll see, typically known as like bailiff on TV or a movie, they really set a lot of the courtroom rules, and we are just kind of interacting, like paying attention to like how they interact with those that have a case or really are volunteers as well. There are 3 Court Watch tracks and one that is available right now, which is the Judicial Accountability tract. And so we have a rubric that we use to evaluate judges on professionalism, sensitivity, and accessibility. We'll go over that rubric in the next slide, but for now, I'll tell you about the other 2 that aren't available yet. We have the bail hearing one that has a to be determined start date, where we'll sit in on bail hearings to ensure that bail is being assessed fairly and by the standards agreed upon by the judges and the county. Lastly, the DA track is one that is tailored to people more familiar with the judicial system, and that track will focus on making sure that DA Mulroy is following through with his campaign promises and that those policies are being seen in the courtroom. I do want to mention that the Judicial Accountability Track is accessible to all levels, whether you have experience with court or not, and that is why we use the rubric in the way that we do. And for the Judicial Accountability Track, this is the rubric we use. You'll complete a new rubric each time that you court watch. There are 7 questions where you'll rank a judge from 1 to 4, with 1 being the worst and 4 being the best. The questions are: did court start on time? Did the judge give the appearance of neutrality? Did the judge assign public defenders to all who asked? Were both the accused and the victim treated with dignity? Did the judge handle each case with the sensitivity warranted? Were you able to hear? Did you have any issues getting in? And so each of those have a scenario that you'll mark, like they got a 1 in this. For example, on the did court start on time? A 1 would be court began later than an hour after 9. And so if you're there and the judge is not there, or the judge does not start court until 10 o'clock or later, you'll give them a 1. You'll give them a 2 if it starts between 9:41 and 9:59. A 3 if it started between 9:21 and 9:40, and then a 4 if it started before 9:20. And so each question has it broken down into what exactly is happening, and that way you're able to just add it up at the end, and you'll write your totals in the far right column. And so there are a few questions on the back that you will answer as well. The date and the judge name are probably 2 of the most important questions that are on there. The date, so if there's any feedback about when something happened, we want to be able to look at the rubric and say, okay, on this date, our court watcher noted this. And then judge name is, of course, important so that we can assign that rating to the correct judge. The other questions are: if the judge would only appoint a lawyer under specific circumstances, like they must be in custody or can't have a job, what were they? If you weren't allowed in, what was the explanation given? Any notable remarks from the judge? What do you think this judge did really well? And what could this judge do to improve? and then final impressions. Once we get 10 to 15 for each judge in that cycle, we will produce a report and put them on a continuum that highlights their ratings as well as comments from you and people who have had them as a judge. It is important that you turn in your rubric from your court watch session in a timely manner so that we are able to get the reports out quickly. So, how do you sign up for Court Watch? So after orientation, please send me an email to yanae@justcity.org. In this email, let me know that you have completed the orientation and email me any questions that you may have. I will then send a follow-up email that contains everything you need to sign up. That email will include any answers to questions you may have, the rubric from the previous slide, a sign-up link to Volunteer Odyssey with the code you need, the volunteer manual that gives you a little bit more detail about our program, and it has a glossary with terms that you're likely to hear, and resources that include videos, podcasts, books, and articles that are all criminal justice reform related. Then from there, you will sign up on Volunteer Odyssey, sign up for Volunteer Odyssey for the shift, and prepare for your first day. We use Volunteer Odyssey because they provide volunteers with a transcript of all of the times that they have volunteered, and it allows us to have a wider reach in our volunteer pool. So, on the day of Court Watch, there are really 4 things that you should focus on. So, number 1 is to meet at 201 Poplar in the assigned courtroom at 9 a.m. You will know what your courtroom is before you get there, and I will be there for your first time. Number 2 is to eat a light breakfast. We say light because 1, we don't want you to be so hungry that you're only thinking about how hungry you are. And then 2, we don't want you to be so full that you're falling asleep. We want to make sure that you're able to pay attention the whole time. And so make sure that you have your Court Watch card with you at all times. This is what that Court Watch card looks like. It is the size and feel of a credit card. They most likely won't ask you for it until you don't have it. That happens to me every time. If I don't have it with me, they're like, oh, can I see your identification? And then I'm like, oh, sorry, let me go get that. This just lets them know that you're a part of our program, and our program is approved to do Court Watch. And then be prepared to take notes using their rubric. We want them to be as thorough as possible. And use the rubric, use like the questions that are like on the back of the page, and then also pay attention to just like what is happening around you. It is about 3 hours long, and so you are able to go to the bathroom as you need. Some Court Watch tips are to, number 1, know yourself and your limits. It is important that you know like what content triggers you may have, what cases that you can and cannot handle, and let me know those so that I can be sure to not put you in a courtroom that's going to have a lot of that present. We emphasize that because consistent exposure to things that we are not actually ready for or prepared for can really lead to burnout. And this is such a long and like a long process that we want people to be able to stay the course. Reform is a marathon. It is not a sprint, unfortunately. And so just know yourself, know your limits. Like there are still cases that I kind of refuse to watch just because I know that I cannot watch objectively. And if I cannot watch objectively, it is not beneficial to our program, and it's not beneficial also to me as a person, and making sure that I am able to, again, critically evaluate my beliefs and stuff. Number 2 is to follow the rules that the deputies set, even if they don't make sense in the moment. The deputies are really our key to getting in and out of the courtroom. We want to maintain a very civil relationship with them. So some deputies will have rules about putting your arm on the back of the bench or like playing with your hair. Um, and a lot of deputies will sometimes have like rules about whether or not you can use your phone. Don't just assume that you'll be able to take notes using your phone, because that is completely up to the deputy of that courtroom, and that could change from day to day as well. Tip number 3 is to pay attention to the nonverbal communication that is happening. There is so much happening in the courtroom at all times, and a lot of times you might not be able to hear that well. And so it is important that you are looking at body language, you are seeing the way that people interact, seeing what's being said without actually being said. And then tip number 4, pretty practical. Park a couple blocks away if you're able to, in order to avoid expensive parking fees. Parking right outside the courtroom is fairly expensive for shorter amounts of time, but if you park even just a block away, you still have to pay for parking, but then sometimes it's $5, sometimes it's $2, and then if you park on some other like strategic side streets, you'll be able to find free parking as well. So here are 3 frequently asked questions. Again, like I said, if you have more questions, please just let me know. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. And so number 1 was, how are courtrooms assigned? So the judges are broken up into 4 groups so that we are able to focus our watch on a few judges at a time. What courtroom you're in will depend on what judges we're focusing on in that moment. So we are in the process of evaluating a couple right now, and then we'll post the reports on those 4, and then the next group will have maybe 5, so that we're able to make sure that we're getting them out as frequent as possible using, honestly, what volunteer power we have. Then, what are the Court Watch program requirements? So, court runs Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Availability during that time is important. We don't have a requirement on how often you must watch, but the more consistent that you're there, the more familiar you are. Like, you'll be able to be with the process and the judges in that cycle. You also just feel more comfortable watching, and you'll be able to tune out what you need to and like pay attention to what you need to, because I know the first couple times, honestly, can be a little bit of a sensory overwhelm. But the more consistent you are in the courtroom, the more you're able to just have a focus on what you're wanting to focus on. And then, are there other alternatives to actually sitting in the court if I want to volunteer? So I know that time, the Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., doesn't work for a lot of people. And so if you are still interested in helping with Court Watch and you're skilled at social media or creating written reports, I would love for you to join in that way. I'm always looking for other ways to get others plugged in. So if you have an idea, send me an email or a text message. That is it. I really thank you for taking the time to be here with us and watch this orientation in order to get prepared to court watch. We really believe in this program. We really believe in the impact that it can have on our community. And we really know that it is important that we are there. It is important that the community knows that we are with them and watching, because what happens in 201 Poplar affects all of us. My phone number and my email address are attached to this right here. Please send me a message anytime, send me an email. And if I don't get back to you as quickly as you might need, feel free to send me another one. I am never offended if I have a reminder text. Okay. Have a great day. Thank you.